Welcome to the second session of Operating System and Linux. I'm Manibhushan D'Souza, and in today's session, we are going to look at types of system. In particular, we are going to look at a multiprocessor system, distributed system, clustered system, real-time system, and a handheld system. So let's begin our journey with the multiprocessor system. The word multiprocessor indicates that there are more than one processor. Now, what is this processor? Processors are commonly called as the CPU or the central processing unit, also called as the microprocessor in our PCs. So, there will be more than one microprocessor or a CPU in these system. All these microprocessor or the processor are connected to each other via a common bus. So we know that a CPU or a microprocessor communicates with the external world using bus, and you might have studied about data buses, address buses, and so on and so forth. So the microprocessor which are over here or the processor which are over here, they communicate with each other using the common bus. Also, there can be a common memory which is shared across the processor. So they can also have the same memory being used by all of them. Apart from the memory, there can also be number of peripheral devices which can also be shared by all of them. So what you notice over here is this is a system that is tightly connected to each other. That is why we also called them as tightly coupled system. So these are the system that communicate using the same shared bus. Now, how do one microprocessor or one processor communicates with the other processor? So, if you take one microprocessor or one CPU and the other CPU, there is this common bus. Now, they don't directly interact with each other. Whenever they want to communicate with each other, the processor will write into the memory. This shared memory can be read by the other processor. So this is how they communicate with each other. Apart from that, both of them will share the same clock cycle so that they go in unison. Okay. What do you get if you connect the microprocessor together? So there are many advantages. One such advantage is the increased throughput. So what is the meaning of saying increased throughput is, suppose if one person can do a work, lot of work is there. So let's assume you have a lot of work. So lot of work to be done. And you have only one person who is allotted to do this work. Okay, so what will happen? That person will get tired, okay? And as a human, but if it is a computer, it will not get tired. However, it's going to take a lot of time for the processor to complete it because a lot of work is there. Instead of that, let's assume that you are giving the work, the lot of work is there, piles of work is there, you give it to many people. In that case, they can parallelly complete the task. So the work can be completed very quickly. So suppose if you are building a house, you might have noticed if there is a construction work, you can have only one person who is doing everything, but that's going to take maybe years together to complete a house. So what is generally done, more than a person will parallelly do the work. So one person will start from one end of the wall, the other person will do the work from the other end of the wall. So if this is the wall, one person will start doing it here, the other person will start laying the bricks on the other side, and they somehow coordinate and do it. Now if one person requires 10 days to complete this work, one person, build this wall. So if you put a 2-person, does this mean that we are going to complete it in 5 days? The answer is no. You may take 6 days, because there is when they start laying it down, there must be a coordination between these two. Otherwise, one person is laying the brick and the other person will remove it and then put the same brick at the same place. So there could be a conflict. So when we have n number of people who are doing the work will not reduce by n times, but slightly towards the n times. So same thing is true. If you have a work that has to be completed very quickly, and if you put n processor, then the speed is not going to increase by n. So what do I mean to say that if there is a work that requires 10 days to be completed, and if you put 10 microprocessor, so one microprocessor or one processor will complete it in 10 days. If you put 10 processor, then it does not mean that it's going to complete it in 1 day. Roughly it's going to complete it in 1 day, not exactly, but maybe 1.5 days or some. The reason is there must be some coordination that is required. So there is a amount of overhead that is required, and always there is a contention, there is a competition in using the resources. So you can expect there is a slight reduction in the speed that is required. The next one is the economy of scale. So what is the meaning of saying economy of scale is, as we increase more and more number of processor, the amount that we are spending, that can be reduced. For example, instead of buying 10 computers, separate computers with all the peripherals and all the things, we can have 10 microprocessor connected together in some way, so that we can increase the speed. So we are able to increase the speed by having 10 machine connected together with the common storage. Otherwise what we have to do is we have to buy the storage for every machine. We have to buy a separate storage. So if you have 10 machine, 10 hard disk has to be purchased, whereas in this case one hard disk you purchase it and allow all the 10 machines to use the same hard disk. So you are reducing the storage space as well as the amount of money that is required to buy those devices, as well as if you are connecting 10 computers, you will have to power all of them together. So there is going to be a extra power that need to be consumed. So you can reduce them. You can economy means you can save on these things. Next one is increased reliability. What do I mean by saying that is, if one of the processor fails, the other processor can still continue working. So the system will not crash, it will work with it. So it is like if you have a inverter at home, and if the power fails, inverter will start giving you the power. So you are not you don't go out of power. So in the same way, if there is one microprocessor, if it fails, the others can still function, but there can be a reduction in the speed with which they may be working. So they are still able to produce the same amount of work, slightly reduced one. So they continue to give the services, but with a slightly lower level, that is called as graceful degradation. So if there are 10 microprocessor are there, or 10 processors are there, if one of them fails, the system may slightly go down by 10%. If two are down, it may go to 80%. So this is called as graceful degradation. It is not like if one CPU is down, then all the system will come to a crashing halt. It is not that case. Slowly it will start going down. So this kind of system which follow the graceful degradation, they are also called as fault tolerant. What is the meaning of saying fault tolerant is, if one of them fails, the others are able to tolerate them and able to continue the work. There are two types of tightly coupled processors are there, microprocessor or multiprocessor are there. So first one is called as symmetric multiprocessing, SMP. Other one naturally is asymmetric multiprocessing. What is the meaning of saying symmetric multiprocessing? Symmetric means that there is a symmetry. All of them are same. So it is like in a classroom, all of you are same. You, none of you will consider yourself to be a boss. But if you go to an organization, if you go to an office, there will be a manager who is the boss, and all the others are below him. And maybe in your classroom, all of you are same, all of your friends are same, but your teacher, whoever is teaching you, is slightly higher. So maybe you may say that your teacher is a black sheep, maybe odd person out. That is true. In case of symmetric multiprocessing, what is there is every processor is considered to be equally capable of doing the work. So we don't say that this is a very powerful system, only this can do it, the others can't do it. Whereas in the other asymmetric processing, what we have is we dedicate some processor as a master. So who is going to control all the slaves? The others are only workers. This master is going to control all the workers. How you have in factories, there is somebody called as a supervisor. So what is the work of this supervisor? Supervisor will monitor all the other persons. So he is the one who is going to, he or she is the one who is going to give the work to all the other subordinates. Okay, so in the same way, in the master slave environment, master is the one that controls all the activity. The slave will follow whatever the master has said. That is a symmetric. Whereas in case of symmetric, all of them are same. So all of them are considered to be peer. So peer means they are same. We don't distinguish one from the other. Okay. So if all of them run at the same time, you don't get any deterioration, but there may be a slightly lower speed. If you have n symmetric process, the speed may increase by a slightly excuse me, a n amount. The speed may increase by n amount. Okay, most modern operating systems support this SNP. So how does this symmetric multi-processing will work? Multiprocessors will work. We have many CPUs. So you have the many CPUs over here. All of them are connected to the memory, and all of them are sharing the memory. Remember, any one of them can do any work. So they are all equal. So there is nobody called as a master who is going to control them. So that is called as symmetric multiprocessing. Identical to this one, the other option in the tightly coupled multiprocessor is the asymmetric multiprocessing. What is asymmetric multiprocessing? As I already told you, there is one processor, there may be one or more, which is assigned a specific task. So this is called as master processor. So what does the master processor will do? It will allocate the work to all the others who are called as slave processor. So the slave processor will ask the master, what am I supposed to do? The master processor will tell all the slave processor, you are supposed to do this, you are supposed to do this, you are supposed to do this, and so on and so forth. Okay. So it is generally common in the very large system. Okay. Now let's look at the tight. We have seen the tight coupled system. What is the tight coupled system? A tight coupled system is where everything is tightly connected together through a common shared bus. Whereas the other side of this is the loosely coupled system. So not everybody is connected to the same bus, but they are somehow connected to each other. How do you connect them? So they are connected to each other using high-speed communication like your network or a telephone line. So one processor is connected to the other processor using the network. So this is called as a loosely coupled system. So here they are not directly communicated. So one is connected to the other via the network. So one is connected to the other is connected to the other. So all of them are connected together via the network. That is why they are called as loosely coupled. Now every processor, here we may not have the same memory being shared across all of them, because it is a network. We may not quickly access the memory. So every processor may have their own local memory. So there will be a small memory associated with every processor which are involved in it. What's the advantage of this kind of system? First of all, resource sharing. Suppose if you have a printer at this place is connected to one node, others excuse me, can send the printing to the one. So a existing resource can be shared. For example, your friend has a printer at home. You can, using the internet, you can connect to his machine and then send a print on his printer or her printer. So you are able to use their resources. So that's the advantage of it. Okay. The other one is the load sharing. So instead of putting the if there is a lot of work given to one of them, that can give it to the all the others, so that all the others can share the load. Other one is the reliability. If one of them fails, the others can still continue working. The last one is the communication. This is what you are using. So we need to have a communication from one system to the other system. Using a network, we can always communicate between the system. Okay, so the one type of loosely coupled systems are a distributed system. So distributed system uses the networks for communicating with each other. So in this, there will be several physical processors which are connected to each other using the network. Okay, by connecting them via network, we can distribute the system and we can share their computational task. So when I say a distribution, what do I mean to say is one computer is there in maybe Mangalore or Dakshina Kannada, the other is there in the Mysore, third one is in the Hassan. We are able to distribute our task across the network. It is a distributed system connected via network. Now, I have just given you an analogy, not that it is always connected. One machine is there and the other machine. Machines are there maybe in the same room, but just to give an analogy, we can distribute them on the different place. Okay, so distributed system requires networking infrastructure. Like if it is within a small area, we are using local area network. For example, what I told you is from one region to the other region, you can use wide area network. There are two types of distributed system that are available. One is the client server system. The other one is a peer-to-peer system. So what is peer-to-peer? Again, I told you what is meaning of saying peer. Everybody is same. All of us are, all of you, excluding me, all of you are peers. That means you are all same. None of you are great or none of you are lower. Everybody has the equal potential. You can do anything what others are able to do it. So you are at the same level. In the same way, in peer-to-peer system, there can every unit that you have, usually we call them as a node, every node is able to do any task that the others are able to do it. Okay, remember they are distributed system, they are loosely coupled system. So when we say loosely coupled system, they don't share their memory and there is no common clock. Okay, because one computer is here, other computer is there in Bangalore, means how can you have the common system clock? It is not possible. Okay, every machine has their own local memory. Okay, whenever one processor wants to communicate with the other, they use the network like telephone lines or communication like. Okay, so these are commonly called as a loosely coupled or distributed system. So in the peer-to-peer system, every processor is able to do it, but the given task is distributed to the other. When it comes to the client server system, there what we have is, excuse me, there what we have is we have a client and we have a server. So what the client is doing, client is making a request to the server and the server is able to provide the services. So we have a server that is able to serve the client and the client are able to receive the request from the or receive the services from the client. So whenever something has to be done, the client will go to the server and say, can you do this? Server will do it and then give it to the client. Now the other way around can also happen. The server may start monitoring all of them and give some task to the client and ask them to return back something to it. So it is also possible. But what you have is a server which is dedicated to do something else than the client. So you can take clients are all peers, but server is not same as client, because server is something different from the client, because it is slightly higher. Now, in terms of the processing speed or in terms of the memory, it has a higher things than the client, whereas the client, or maybe they are same, or they have in whether they are same or not, they have a slightly lower capacity in terms of memory, in terms of processing, in terms of the speed, everything, than the server. So servers are able to do better things than the client. Now let's look at the other type of loosely coupled system, and they are called as clustered system. Okay, so in this, two or more systems are clustered or coupled together. Okay, okay, what do we mean by saying that is like your client and server system, you are also having many system, many computers. So what about the peer system? All are connected. What about client and server? They are all connected, and there is a server who is different from the client. So this is how we have the client and the server system. So you have a server and all are the client. Okay, and the server is connected to all of them. Okay, so you have like this. So this is client server one. At the central you have the server and all the clients are connected. In case of a clustered system, there are many number of nodes. The same thing, they are all there, they are all maybe connected via some communication line. All of them are connected. Okay, but for an external person, they look as a single. Okay, so you have a cluster of computer who are all interconnected. Okay, so you have all of them are interconnected, and they may have a common shared memory. Okay, they are all maybe using the same memory. Okay, maybe they are connected together a LAN. Okay, and because they are the same, the communication between them are very fast. So they are able to communicate very quickly with each other. Okay, for an external person, they will interact with one of them. Okay, that's usually called as master. This is general case, master, and they will give the work to this master. Master will distribute that work with all the clients, maybe others, all the other nodes. And once their work is completed, master will combine all their works, and the results are sent back to the outside world. So what you see here is you have a cluster. Okay, and everybody outside world will give the work to the one of them. Okay, not all of them, they don't see all of them. So that one will take the work, whatever work you have given, and what the that one will do, they will go and distribute the work to all the others. So somehow this work that you have given, part of it is distributed given to all of them. These will complete their work. The nodes inside this cluster will complete the work and return the result back. So this one, the main node, will connect those result and finally send the result back to you. So all of them work together as one unit. Okay, that is why they are called as a cluster, one cluster of a byte. Okay, all of them, because they won't have to communicate with each other, they run a separate software, that is the clustering software. Okay, each of them can monitor the work of the other. There are two types of clusters. One is called a symmetric cluster, the other one is a symmetric cluster. What is symmetric and asymmetric? Now again the word says, in asymmetric, one of them is like a master which will control the activity of all the other. That is what I have told you just now. I gave an example that is actually a symmetric, wherein you have one master and all the other nodes will be there. Okay, this master will control all the others. Okay, so this master will receive the work and distribute it to all the other nodes. Okay, maybe you can call them as slave. The slaves will perform their work and return the result back to the master, and the master will return the result back. So why it is asymmetric? Because there is one which is different from the remaining. So all of them are same, all the nodes that you see here, all the workers, so called as workers, if you say, all the workers are same, all the slaves are same, but the master is a different machine. However, what happens if the master itself fails? So then entire thing will come to an end. So that, the master, if the supervisor goes out, nobody will work. So if I walk out of the class, you will start talking, you will do unproductive work. So if one goes, if I go out of the class, what I will do, I will ask your class rep to monitor the class. In this case, what happens is, there will be one node that is called as a standby host that will start monitoring the master. So this is called as a hot standby host. Now this why it is hot is, it will be there. It knows what work was taken and who has all the work being distributed. So it knows everything. If the master goes out, immediately it will promote itself as a master and take in charge. So it is like, if the chief minister is not there, then the deputy chief minister will act as the chief minister. So you know that if the principal is not there, the vice principal will come and do the work. In the same way, if the master fails, okay, the hot standby host will promote itself as a master and it will start working. What about the symmetric mode? In the symmetric mode, all these there is no master. So you have a cluster, but consisting of many nodes. Okay, there is no master. So the given work is distributed among them, and everybody monitors all the others' work. If one of them fails, that work is taken up by whoever is free, it will do the work. So it is like, if you go to this camp, NSS camp and other things, the work is given. You are split into clusters. They will form a group. I hope those who have gone to NSS camp, what they do is, they will split you into, on the first day itself, they will split you into groups, and they will say, sometimes they will give the name of the flowers or the rivers and so on. They will give one name to each group, and you are a cluster now. So the entire group in the NSS camp has been clustered into small group. Everybody is assigned one group is assigned one work. Now, if you are there in one group and if your friend has not completed the work, what you will do? As a team spirit, you will go and do their work. Okay, so NSS, all people who are there in the NSS, you know it very well. So that is what is being done in the symmetric mode also. In the symmetric mode, what happens is, if one of them is not able to do it, the others will do. Okay. So here two or more hosts are running the application and they are monitoring each other. Okay. If one of them fails, the others will be able to run it. Okay. Now let's look at the other type of system. The other type of system is called as a real-time system. This is a special type of system which have a constraint on the time within which they have to give the result. Okay, if you are using the your desktop PC or your mobile, there is no restriction that the output has to come within a given instance of time. No, most of you are familiar with it. Sometime when you double click on the icon, it takes longer time for the system to show up the application. So it will not immediately show up, whether it is your mobile or whether it is your laptop or desktop or anything. There is no restriction that the things has to be done within this much of time. Whereas for the real-time system, there is a requirement. If the result has to come within 1 second, it is 1 second. It cannot be 1.001 second. It is 1 means 1 second. Where do you use them? You use them in controlling the other devices. They're generally used to control the operations of the other. So if you have a lot of industries, so you've seen this electronic chip laying in PCB. They lay the robots lay the chips. I don't know whether you might have seen those videos wherein the IC or the processor are laid onto the board. Okay, they go very fast. Now, when they lay that particular chip, it has to be soldered, and the soldering has to be very quick. If the soldering takes longer time, it will heat the chip, and whatever IC or whatever chip it is trying to put, that itself will get corrupted. So it has to be done within that time. If you are using, all of you are watching this, I hope most of you are watching this on a LCD television. Now, if you look at this LCD or LED, there is a substrate of transistor that has to be laid. Now, how do they do that thing? It's not so easy. It has to be done by a machine robot. Very precise way of doing it. Humans can't do that thing. A fire alarm system in a chemical factory, if the or a regulating system in a chemical factory, you know these chemical factories, most of them, or even steel factory or anything, they have boilers. So generally they use the boilers, which produces extremely high the pressures. Now the pipe which are carrying those pressures, there is a limit up to which they can hold those pressure. Even though the pressure is very high, they can limit. Even if there is a small variation, some Pascal additional, in that case, when I say Pascal, it is a force that I am talking about. So if the pressure increases, immediately the control has to be applied so that the pressure can be released out. Otherwise, what will happen is that there is going to be an explosion altogether. Okay, so when something happens, if there is small variation, immediately the action has to be taken. There is no delay. If the system is delayed or even by a fraction of a second, the result would be disastrous. Okay, so this type of systems are called as real-time systems. So real-time system, generally how they work is you don't go and type the data into them. So like your PC or your desktop or your mobile, you don't type the content, input the name of the person, input their age. You don't do that thing. They usually get the data from the sensors like pressure, temperature and moisture and so on and so forth. They sense it. You've seen these in hospitals. If you look at the ICU units, there are a lot of sensors that they put onto the patient. Even if one of the minor changes there, immediately it will take the action. So these are real-time systems. If small variation is there and if the system takes longer time, then the end result maybe patient may die. Okay, so these sensors sense the data, give it to the computer must analyze the data and must take the action within a specified time. If it is a fraction of second, it has to complete their work within a fraction of second. It cannot delay it. That is why these systems are called as real time. It has to be done within a real time. Where do we use it? Most of the time in a scientific experiment, medical imaging system, maybe industrial control system, maybe automobile. So you today we are all familiar with the fuel injection. So BS6 compliance vehicle, and the no vehicles in India without BS6. Nobody can sell the vehicles. So government has made it a very definite that any vehicle sold now has to be BS6 compliant. And one of the important thing in BS6 is the fuel injection. So the injecting fuel is completely timed by a system. Okay, so this kind of system requires real-time system. Maybe it is used in the violence, like weapon systems use it, home appliances, and so on and so forth. So many where it has been used. Okay, so in terms of a real-time system, there is a well-defined, a fixed time constraint. Okay, the work has to be done within that time frame. If not, the system, whatever the result it will make, is going to be disastrous. Okay, so within a specified time constraint, the result the system has to process it. If not, the things could be disastrous. So there are two types of real-time system. One is called as a hard real-time. The other one is a soft real-time. The hard real-time, as I've told you, it will guarantee that the given work is completed in the specified time. Okay, it is bound to the time restriction and it will not fail. Whether it is reading the data, processing it, and producing the output, everything is done within that constraint that is dictated to it within that particular time limit. If it will not fail, that is what is called as hard real. There is a restriction. Whereas in the soft restriction, the soft real, what is happening is the restriction slightly, there is a kind of relay that is given. So in this case, what happens is the processor may be doing some work. Whenever a real-time system comes, that work is done without an interruption. So if a real-time task comes, that is done first, all the others will have to wait. And the system will not, it is like you have this ambulance coming, you were driving, you were on road, ambulance comes, you are supposed to give away to the ambulance. You cannot hold it for a very long time. So this kind of thing. So when the real work has to be done, every others will walk out and this work will be done. So in other words, you know very well, ambulance are not kept waiting on the road. So in the same way, real time, soft real time, any work is there, that work is done first, others will have to wait. The last type of system that we see today is the handheld system. These are all systems that you are familiar today. Once upon a time, people were not aware, like me. We never dreamt that there will be this kind of device, but today it is all common thing. So you have the mobile, you may have tabs, or the personal digital assistant. Now today you don't find this personal digital assistant, because personal digital assistant has been taken care by your smartphones. The smartphones are doing what the other type of devices were doing. But once upon a time, PDAs, generally called as, were there. They are PDAs were like your tabs, if you want to know. So how the PDA will look like, you have seen these tablets, the tabs, they used to look like that, slightly smaller one. In olden days, the technology was not so improved, but it was there. Okay. However, developing an application, whether it is a PDA, whether it is a smartphone, all of them, there are many challenges for the developers. As a developer, if you want to do it, the challenges include is their screen size. There is a limitation on the screen size, there is a limitation on the amount of memory it is using, and there is also a limitation on the processing power. Okay, so because they have a very small memory, the operating system must manage the memory very efficiently. So when the processor completes, the memory has to be returned back to the free pool, so that it can be used by the other. So it has to do it very quickly. In the same way, the processor in this kind of systems are very slow as compared to the PC. Now you may say that no sir, I have a very powerful smartphone. I agree with you. Today, if you look at the smartphones, actually they have far better ability than your laptop or a desktop. They are having very powerful processor. They even have graphics accelerators. They have sensors, everything. If you compare a smartphone with your laptop or a PC, you may say that that is far better. I agree with you, but generally what is observed is to do the high-end processing you need a very powerful processor. When you say there is a when you need a powerful processor, like whether it is i7 or i9 or this kind of processor, they require a lot of power to run those processor. In particular Intel, uh, why we don't use Intel in the smartphones are they heat up and they produce they consume a lot of power. now, how do you power this handheld device? Using the battery. Now, if the you know very well, you were once upon a time you were playing games. So, if you play games for a longer time, games actually require the dedicated the graphics processor. When you use the graphics processor, we strain on it, the battery will drain like anything, you know it. You are when you play the games, your battery will discharge much faster, and when the battery discharges you have to charge it. If you don't want to charge it, you have to buy a bigger battery. If you want to buy a bigger battery, the size of the device increases. So all these processes are there. So generally what is done is these handheld devices, they have a very small very less powerful processor, which is powered by slightly lower battery. So as a developer, you have to see to it that you don't do very CPU intensive work, because it's going to slow down the speed of your application. Next one is the small display. You know very well the display of these handheld devices. They are very very small devices, handheld devices, and if you want to show a very big thing like how you see it in a 40-inch screen, that kind of effect you can't get it in a 5-inch screen or a 3-inch screen. So when you are producing something on the screen, you must see to it that the things are fitting into a smaller display area, or you may have to split them into different areas so that the user can move across them and see them. That's all in this class. If you are really interested in knowing more about it, please refer the Galvin's book on operating system. Thank you for your interest.